Hi, this is Violette Haldane, and today we are doing our session on understanding how government works. Our guest today is Senator Doug McCrory, and Chris Ann folks will be doing the interview again. This session came about as we were in the community. We realized that members of our community did not understand how government works. So this is an education series where we are talking with people from various branches of the government for them to explain what they do and for us to learn more. As I said today, our guest is going to be Senator Doug McCrory and Chris Ann. I'm going to hand it over to you for the introductions, and thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris Ann Folks, and I am a high school student at Suffield High School. And you're a state representative, and you are also the senator of Hartford. So I want to ask you, like, how do you balance the two? Like, how are they different?
Okay. So I used to be a state representative, and I did that for 12 years. I used to represent North Hartford, Blue Hills area. Then I eventually ran for the Senate office 3 years ago in a special election. And now I'm the state senator, and I represent Hartford, Bloomfield, and Windsor. And you asked me, how do I balance two? I'm thinking you believe how I balance the two as being a state senator, and also with my other job, my I quote unquote call my real job, which I'm an educator. I balance it pretty well because one of the laws we have in the state of Kent is our employers have to provide us opportunities to go serve while we're serving at the Capitol. So I get a chance to go away, and I make up my time doing when I'm not in session. So it's a really tough balance, but it works out very well because I'm currently the chair of Education Committee as an educator. So it kind of falls in line for what I do, what I know, what I'm good at. So it's a pretty good balance.
Okay, and so you said you were a state representative for 12 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How did you become a state representative? How long did it take?
Oh, good question. So why I became a state representative and how long it took. So I never really thought about running for office as a kid, as a young person growing up. I knew once I turned 18, I knew I had a responsibility to vote. And I did that. My parents taught me that. I learned the things that our people came through to get the right to vote. So I did that all my life. Fast forward, when I became an educator, one of my friends and I wanted to start a school, a charter school back then for young men, specifically young men. We want to do something different. We believe in single gender education, like Bellman College and Morehouse College. So we wanted to do that on the elementary or middle school level. We did. It was extremely successful. I mean, our young men were doing so well, but yet the state of Connecticut wouldn't give us a charter to open up our own school. And we tried for 3 consecutive years, and they kept telling us no. And I went up to the Capitol for my first time as a young person, a young adult, to learn the system, how this thing worked, this educational thing worked. And I was told by someone, I'm not going to tell the name, that they knew what we were doing. They knew that we were being successful for our young men, but they knew that the state would not support it. So then I realized that, hey, this educational thing, among other things, is political. And if I want to change the system, I had to be part of the system. So therefore, I decided to run for office. And I ran for office. I ran against an incumbent that was been there for like 16, 18 years. But because of the fact that I taught in the same community that I lived in, and I lived there all my life, and my parents lived there, when I ran for office, I knocked on every door, and everyone told me they'll vote for me because they either knew me, they knew my parents, or I had their children their children in my classroom, and I was successful at winning the election. I've been there ever since.
Okay. So you're the senator now. How long have you been the senator?
Good question.
How was that? Like, how did the election process go? Did you always want to become the senator?
So after being in the House about 12 years, I think I was doing a pretty good job. The senator before me, you might know his name pretty big because he was there for such a long time. Senator Eric Coleman, he went on and became a judge. So the seat opened up. It was an open seat. So your natural progression when you're elected official, you start out in the House, and the next logical move is to go for the seat. It was a special election because he left in the middle of the year, and I had like 10 days to raise the money and run, and I raised the money and I ran and I won that election. And now I serve not just Hartford, I serve Bloomfield and Windsor also. So I have a lot more territory, up to about 60,000 people that I represent.
So, how has being the senator so far been for you?
I really, really enjoy it. Previously, when I was a state rep, I didn't chair a committee. I wasn't the head of committee. I was on other committees. But once I became a senator, I had an opportunity to actually lead and chair a committee. And the education committee was the committee I really wanted because I believe education is the most important thing that we can do in our state and do in our country. So when the opportunity presented itself, I took advantage of it, and I'm chairing that committee.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. You said that you're the state representative in Hartford, Bloomfield, and Windsor.
I was state rep. Just when I was a state rep, I only represented Hartford. So when you're a state rep, the area of the representation is kind of smaller. You can represent up to about 25,000 people. So that was just the north end of Hartford. But then when I became the senator, your reach is much further. So now I represent not just North Hartford, but I also represent Bloomfield and Windsor as a senator.
Okay, so you're the senator of
Hartford, Bloomfield, and Windsor.
And Windsor. So do you play a different role? I know you're the senator, but like the responsibilities, are they different in each area?
Yes and no. So the responsibility is the biggest responsibility is for whether you're in the House or the Senate is to set good policy for the entire state, right? So that doesn't change. Only thing that changed now is people have more access. More people have access to me to solve and work their problems. Before it was just people in Hartford that had their concerns, and I had a strong ear to what was going on in my own neighborhood. Basically, it was the same neighborhood that I lived in, so I knew all their concerns because it was the same neighborhood that I grew in, right? So, but when you expand to other communities like a Bloomfield, Windsor, their concerns might be a little different from the concerns of the people that live in Hartford. So you have to be conscious of what their needs are, also at the same time understanding the needs of the people that live in your community.
Okay. And as a senator, do you have a term limit? Like, how does that work?
That's a very good question. So in Connecticut, we have term limits. So a person can continue to run and run and run. But a term is only 2 years. So we have to run for office every 2 years, whether you're in the House or you're in the Senate. Now the governor, the state officials, they get 4-year terms. So the governor can run and be in office for 4 years. But when you're in the House and the Senate, it's only a 2-year term.
Okay. I'm sure you've heard this term before, but how do you feel about the term all politics is local? What does that mean to you?
Man, first of all, Chris, you're asking very good questions. All politics, when you hear the term all politics is local, that tells you that things that are going to affect you most are the things that are closest to you, right? So many times when you hear all politics it's during the presidential election because everybody runs and go vote, or more people go vote when there's a presidential election, right? Because we see the persons on TV all the time, we hear their speeches and stuff, and we always go out there and want and vote for a president. But so often we forget about all the other things that are directly related to you, and those are the local things that actually affect your lives. And we don't only go out and vote for those for when those elections come up. So when people say all politics is local, it's actually really true because the policies that we set in Connecticut are going to affect you personally. It's going to affect how much money your schools get. It's going to affect how much money your cities get. It's going to affect what your rates on your car insurance or your electricity bill. So all those things are local, and they can affect you, the way you live and how you live. So that's why you hear that term, all politics is local. Don't just be concerned about what's going on in Washington, D.C. You got to be concerned about what's going on in your own neighborhood, in your background. That's what they mean by all politics is really local.
Okay. So what do you do on a committee, especially that you're a chair in the education committee? Like, what's your role? How does that work?
That's another great question. So, on there's a number of committees that we have at the state capitol. We have what we call A committees, which are the big, major committees, and we have what we call B committees, some of the smaller committees. So, I'll just give you an example about three or four, five major committees. So, education is considered a major committee. Judicial is a major committee. Finance is a major committee. Appropriations, which is money, that's a major committee. Health is a major committee, right? So I chair the committee, and what basically as a chairman, you're like the judge, and you're the judge. You're the guy that sit back and have to allow people to express themselves, get their points across, monitor what's going on, be on top of the issues, make sure you know every bill that's coming before you. You have a little knowledge on it from both sides of the aisle, meaning Republican and Democrat, and also understand and know the pros that this bill can do and the cons that the bill can do. So it's my opportunity to just be a judge and jury of the committee and make sure it flows properly when you have your committee meetings. That's my role as a chair.
So just like an overviewer.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say you weren't the senator. How does one become a member on the education committee?
Hey, man, that's an excellent question. So that's a big question. So it's very simple. You ask the leaders of the Senate, is there room for me, or you'll inform them that I would like to be on that particular committee. So before I became the chair, when I was a representative, for the 12 years that I was on the committee itself. I was a member of the committee. So I kind of understood how things operate legislatively. And I also, because I'm educated, I was able to add a different viewpoint of what education should like, because I am an educator. So I knew how the committee process worked. And now I bring you my expertise as a 30-year educator to the committee. And the interesting thing about it, the vast majority of people on the committee are not educators, So, and I think I'm one of the first few, if not the only educator to actually chair the committee, at least since I've been here.
How many other educators do you know of that are on the education?
I think about 3, and about 3 actually true educators, and about another 3 more, 4 more that probably came from the boards of education that was members of a local board of education before they got to the state. So they have some they do have some knowledge of education, because they were probably one of the board of education members in their local communities before they became state reps or state senators.
Do you think that the education committee would be like better if it was just educators, like all educators?
Not necessarily. I also should say that even I chair education, but I do sit on other committees also as regular rank and file members. So the question you asked me is, do I think the education committee will run a little better if it was just educators? No, not necessarily, because it's good to hear lay people's ideas and perspective of what things should be and not have like the educational background. I think I like to hear the perspective of people who are not educators, but simply laymen or laywomen who want to get things done in education in our state. So I like the combination of having a little of both. Some who are educators and who are not.
Okay. Does the Education Committee provide fundings for schools and other youth programs?
Absolutely.
Mm.
So the state provides funding to all school districts um, throughout the state of Connecticut. Some get more funding than others. They have this formula, this crazy formula called ECS, and it determines how much school district will receive from the state of Connecticut for funding. So yes, we do. We are a huge provider of financial resources for educational, for the schools, and for educational programming also outside of the traditional school, like after school programming and just things of that nature.
Okay. What public policy do you set for education?
A whole lot of them. Almost anything you do is a lot of it is set by the state. For example, the number of school days you have, we set that policy. When you can start school, we pretty much set that policy. We set policy on what you're going to be taught, whether it's math, science, social study, English. We set policy on curriculum. One of the ones I'm very happy about that we just passed legislation that will require all children in the state of Connecticut to learn Black and Latino history. Um, we set policy on a number of things throughout the state.
How do you set those policies? Like what, based on what? How do you come across?
Very good point. So what typically happens, let's say someone has an idea, right? It could be any person. You might have an idea, or Violet might have an idea. Somebody might well have a concept. They say, I'll give you an example on one that we're working on now, which I think is very important. Someone approached me like and said, "Hey, McCrory, I think all our children should learn financial literacy before they graduate from high school. They should learn about money, how to handle money, the value of money, why it's important, how to invest, how to save, what this thing calls FICAA. You got a check yet? You ever got a check? Yeah, have you worked in summer yet? Okay, all right. Well, anyway, so someone said we need to teach all our children. That should be done. And I did some research. Yeah, go back do some homework. And what I found out that some school districts are teaching their children about financial literacy at a very early age or in high school, and a lot of them are not. And what you'll find out in high resource communities, communities that have spent a lot of money on education, communities outside of our large urban communities or even our ring communities, they're teaching their children about finance at a very early age. Whereas in other communities like Hartford, our kids aren't getting that as an option to take a course. So what I want to do is require that all students have a financial literacy course before they leave high school. And
Okay.
we do our homework. We find out what other states are doing. We see what is successful, what kind of curriculum we can put into place, and we vote on it. And at the most votes, it'll come out of our committee, and then it'll go on to a larger committee to get voted out.
Okay. So back to the funding. We know that you provide fundings for public schools. Um, what about charter and magnet schools?
Good question. I don't know where you get these comes from. You smart. You sound like a smart adult. So we provide funding for charter schools also, and for magnet schools.
Mm-hmm.
The formula is a little different. So you heard me use this term called ECS, educational cost save service. Anyway, so for magnet schools is a little different the way we provide money, and charter schools that's a little different also. So charter schools get X amount of dollars certain for each kid they have in their schools. Same way for our traditional schools and for our magnet schools. It depends on the number of children you have in school, how much money you'll receive.
Okay. Um, you mentioned that you're a member of different committees. What are some
Mhm.
other? you're a part of?
Oh, good. Oh, okay, great. I'm also a member of the Judicial Committee, and I'm also a member of the Finance Committee. Um, those are the other two. Remember, I told you about A committees, which were the big ones, and B committees are the smaller ones. So I serve on them. In my smaller committees, I serve on is banking, and the last one is
What was the one?
GE, banking.
Oh, okay.
Banking. Yeah. So, and the last one is a GAE, general government stuff.
Okay. Um, so what role do you play on the judicial committee?
Oh, I'm a rank and file member. I'm not the chair. I'm one of those people in the committee, and I listen to the back and forth when people come up and propose bills. The vast majority of bills do come through judicial committee. So I sit there and ask questions when people come up and propose bills, or I sit up and ask questions when people are against particular bills. I just ask my questions, and then I make my decision based on what I'm hearing from the people who are up there advocating for or advocating against a bill.
Okay. Okay. And is your role on the finance committee similar to your judicial?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Same thing. My role in there is it's the same.
So, what exactly do you do besides asking questions, or what does a typical day in a meeting look like for for
Good
for
question. So a typical meeting will go something like this. We can have what we call a public hearing. And when we have a public hearing, there might be a bill out there. Let's go back to what we talked about, financial literacy, making sure every kid, takes a financial literacy. So what we do, typically we have a public hearing. That means everybody in the state of Connecticut, anybody can come up there and express their opinions about the bill, right? They get up, they get 3 minutes. They get 3 minutes only, because we ain't gonna sit there and let you talk all day. You get 3 minutes to come up there and express your concerns about any piece of legislation that we're attempting to do. So that will be the public hearing. Then when we go into a committee meeting, and all these things are open to the public. During the committee meeting, it's just the people on the committee that discuss the bill and determine whether we're going to vote for it or vote against it or add something to it or take something away from the bill.
okay,
And sometimes these meetings can go on to wee hours of the morning. They can go on 10, 11 hours. So many people coming up. When you hear something that's very controversial, you'll have people, 300-400 people coming up to speak on a bill. Remember, they all get 3 minutes, right? So you can be in there for a long time, right? And this has happened plenty of times since I've been there.
okay.
What's another question?
So you say you guys do provide funds for for schools and other youth programs. What kind of funds do you guys provide?
Um, so what kind of program we do? So besides the traditional go to school education from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, we provide funding for after school programs. Um, we provide funding for early childhood programs. We
Okay.
provide we provide funding so that students have an opportunity to go on field trips and things of that nature. We provide funding for almost anything that educationally that's related. For breakfast, we make sure you have money for food, transportation. We
Okay.
provide funding for the buses to pick you up back and forth, and a lot of funding we would go to pays the salaries of teachers.
Okay. So if I formed an organization and I wanted to receive fundings, how would I go about that?
Well, if you want to get it from me, you'll call me up or send me an email and say, "Hey, send McCrory, I got this idea, I got this plan. I want to do something, whatever it is, XYZ. I want to start a Demodust club, or I don't know, whatever it is. You'll send me a proposal or idea, then I'll take that. I'll probably ask you a couple of questions. How long you going to do it? Where you going to do it? What you want to do with it? What's your goals? What's your objectives? And then I'll take that to my colleague and say, hey, let's fund this program. Let's put some money for this behind this program, so this person will have opportunity to do the great things they say they're going to do on paper.
Okay. What requirements would I need to meet? Have you ever denied fundings?
Yes. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Most people
Why?
get denied.
What requirements did they not meet?
Well, sometimes it's not that they didn't meet the requirements. It's just there was so many programs you had to choose the one you think that will best serve the people in your community. So you might come up with a program. 10 other people might come up with a whole totally different program, and then we'll decide which one we think is most important and what's needed for that community at the time. That's how it normally works. So there's a lot of people get told no, you know, but there are a lot of people that get told yes too.
Okay, but so how do you and your team that determine like what's more important? Because what's important to someone else cannot be important to me.
You will have to, let's you had a program, you will have to convince me that your program is more important than anybody else's program, and you will have to convince me how it will serve the people, you yourself, and the people in my district, right? So you just have to convince me that this program is the best program because it's going to do X, Y, Z for the people that live in your district, right? And if you can convince me that you got the best program, then I'm gonna do everything possible to make sure it's funded.
Okay.
And then also what people do, and if you can't convince me, and I'm saying this is not just on education but on other committees, what people will do is they hire a lobbyist. You ever heard that term, lobbyist?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, a lobbyist is someone that will come and do the convincing for you, right? So maybe you don't have time to come up to the state capitol and knock on my door or set a meeting up because you got to go to school or you got to go to work. So what people do is hire a lobbyist, and a lobbyist will sit there and they the one will knock on my door and present your program to me and tell you, hey, this is a very good program. You should support it.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time to explain to me how your job
works.
I'm
Man,
just
let me tell you something, Chris, and I've been interviewed on a number of occasions, and I'm not saying this because you're young and you reached out to me. You have asked some of the best questions and some of the very important questions that will teach people how government actually works. I honestly, those were some very good questions, and I hope I gave you answers that are satisfying. I mean, only thing else you can ask me is how a bill becomes a law, right? Like how does it go through the process? I can give you the 30-second quick thing. So what happens is, like you said, let's go back to the financial one. Like you want to teach everybody financial literacy. So that concept is put before our committee, education committee, and we vote yay or nay. And what happens is, let's say everyone votes yes. So it leaves that committee, and now it has to be voted on by everybody, all the senators and all the state reps. So first thing is the Senate bill, and it start in the Senate, and if it passes the Senate, it has to get past the House of Representatives. And if it passes both of them, then the governor has to sign it. And that's how a bill or concept, what you said, becomes law.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Violet.
Thank you, Senator McCrory.
It's an excellent job.
We appreciate we appreciate this. We appreciate this. And I have a follow-up question to the last thing you just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Is it better if before something comes to the Senate at the state level, if it's passed at a city or town level? Does that give it more leverage?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Yes, it does. That's a very good question. Yes, absolutely. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. Much